Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here. This is ThinkTech Hawaii, talking about Asia, I think. ThinkTech Asia, if you will. And we have a really great show in store for you today with a woman lawyer out of Seattle who joins us, courtesy Mike Messina, who used to be here in Hawaii with Pacific Forum and who himself is in Seattle, I guess. And her name is Pradnya Desh. She's an international lawyer and familiar with international investment, which is something that all of us should want to know about. So welcome to the show, Pradnya. Nice to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
She joins us by Skype, as you can see. We love Skype. We'd like to invest in Skype, but I think Google already owns Skype, so no need for that. So tell us first about who you are and what you do in your law practice at Desh International Law.
Sure, Jay. I am the managing partner of Desh International Law. Our firm is based in the Seattle area, and we help U.S. companies to benefit from international investment, as well as helping U.S. companies to sell their products abroad and establish their presence abroad. And so we like to say we've been right in the middle of the changes that have been happening regarding international investment. We've seen a lot of companies benefit from it, as well as we've seen a lot of companies get started and try to figure out the best way to use the surge in international investment.
I'm envious. I'm a lawyer too, you know, except I'm inactive these days. I'm doing ThinkTech instead. This is my passion, but I can fully appreciate the value of practicing in this area. You get to know the world better. You get to think globally. You get to extend the influence of the country in which you're living, presumably. And, you know, you get to appreciate how the world is coming together. It's not a flat world. It's more like a completely entangled world these days. So how did you get into this, Pradnya?
I got into private practice after having been with the U.S. Department of State. So I was a U.S. diplomat and negotiated U.S. number of years before exiting government and coming to private practice. And in fact, that was a really good reason to exit, because the U.S. government launched, as well as the other countries of the WTO, launched the Doha round of trade negotiations back in 2001. And Jay, we are still negotiating the exact same agreement today. So you could say that the negotiations are moving at the speed of government. And so in 2008, I thought it was the right time to help actual individual companies to seize the opportunities that were available rather than work on policy in the broader sense.
Well, this raises an interesting question because we have had plenty of contact with the U.S. Commercial Service and, you know, talking about the services they offer to American businesses who want to do overseas business. And I wonder your thoughts after being both in the government side, negotiating international deals, and now call it the private side of negotiating international deals. Where does government fit in today's international deal making? If I'm a businessman, I have a company that I think has the ability to, you know, do international. Should I come see you, or should I come see the government? And what are the pros and cons there?
Well, so government does have a very important role. And that role is to make sure that there is a level playing field for American companies. So as for rulemaking and for standard settings, it's important for the U.S. government to be involved. However, when it comes to an individual company, there's only so far that government can go on behalf of the individual company, and that's at which point a company should seek their own counsel.
Well, I'll tell you why I think the core reason of why I admire your practice, and that is lawyers elsewhere and also in the U.S. are turning out to be the connection people, the ones who can actually make it happen, because it ultimately is a matter of law, that you can do a deal or not do a deal or get in trouble on a deal, have a contract that works or doesn't. You know, be operating in a way that comports with international and national law or violates it, and lawyers are really important in making that connection. So this is a kind of new role for the American law profession, don't you think?
I agree. It certainly is a new role, being connectors and being the watchdogs to make sure that the system works.
Yeah. So do you do a lot of travel?
I do a lot of travel. I haven't in the last several months. Although my last trip was to Hong Kong, I was speaking about something very similar to this. I was speaking about the EB-5 program and how the Chinese investors could use the EB-5 program to invest in U.S. businesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that takes me to how life is in Seattle, sleepless Seattle, as it were. You know, in Hawaii, it has one, set of parameters and characteristics, but let's look at Seattle first, because that's where you are. What is the international practice like for you in Seattle? Where do you range? What do you touch?
We see quite a few tech companies who either come from all over the world wanting to do business with the behemoths that are in Seattle, specifically Microsoft, but there are also others. So they establish a presence here. And then we also see tech companies, clean technology companies, and advanced manufacturing companies going out. So selling their products abroad, setting up distribution abroad, or perhaps buying a company abroad to help with their distribution and their manufacturing. So we get to see a wide range of sectors: clean energy, advanced manufacturing, as I mentioned, healthcare.
Let's look at the trend. You know, I think at one time American companies wanted to go out and establish points elsewhere in the world, or obtain manufacturing arrangements elsewhere in the world so they could manufacture their project. I mean, I'm sure this happened and still happens for tech companies who want to manufacture in China or other places that are capable of doing it. But do you find that there is a change in the dynamic these days? Do you find that it's not only American companies that want to go on an adventure elsewhere, it's that foreign companies want to go on an adventure in the U.S.?
That's absolutely true. So I'm going to address both parts of what you said. So yes, foreign companies, Chinese companies, well, U.S. companies previously had looked abroad and still do for reducing manufacturing costs. But it's important to note that rising wages in China and flatter wage growth in the United States has started to lure some of the manufacturing back, and we're seeing that very much in Washington State, and we're seeing in other parts of the country. And also the growing need for advanced manufacturing techniques that require higher skills are an important reason why we're seeing manufacturing come back to the United States. It's a very important trend.
Well, is it really a trend or just a sort of light at the end of the tunnel? I mean, I've heard that before, but I really wonder whether we have, we're up to scale where we can really say we're on a recovery. Because if we just have a few a few glimmers, if you will, that may not actually be sustainable. How sustainable is this?
Well, that's true. It's hard to say that it's a trend, and really, until we have the year-end data, we really can't affirmatively declare that it's a trend. But I can tell you anecdotally that the advanced manufacturing companies that we work with around the country that previously had looked to buy a factory in China have this year, in the last few months, in fact, have looked for an investment to expand their capacity here in the United States. And so I can say anecdotally, we are certainly seeing this, and we'll know soon if it's a trend.
Yeah, exciting times. I'm just in the way of background. On this very day, I spent one show earlier this afternoon with an American lawyer. He's, ethnically Chinese, but he's from Hawaii and took his law degree in the U.S., who now works for an American firm out of the Midwest. I mean, this is like a geography lesson. American firm out of the Midwest, which is doing business in Beijing. And here's an American firm. This was unprecedented a few years ago. An American firm which now, according to our discussion today, represents a big state-owned enterprise company, one of the largest companies in all of China. A nice American boy is representing a state-owned company in China and bringing them ultimately back to the U.S. It all seems like it's crisscross. It can go in any direction. and there's big bucks involved. And at the end of the day, you got to give him credit, and you have to give the Chinese firm credit. But it seems like there are no clear directions anymore. It could go anywhere, anytime, and the lawyers can be from anywhere, operating anywhere. And I expect we'll have more of the same in the future, don't you?
I certainly do. And I want to give you a statistic. In the past 5 years, Chinese FDI into the United States has grown from almost nothing to $7 billion. So those are the past 5 years. If you remembering what was happening within our economy in the past 5 years, that's huge. Almost $0 to $7 billion.
Well, you know, they're truly amazing, and the whole Chinese phenomenon has dominated the century so far, and it will continue, I'm sure. And I just wonder how, you know, how important are they in the landscape of what you do? For example, it seems to me like that the numbers are more spectacular with China than any other country in the world. I mean, gee whiz, we have an exchange lawyer here from Shanghai. She's embedded in a law firm here in Honolulu. And their office, it's a Chinese law firm now, has a branch in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia, I tell you. So they're not only investing, they're building, you know, law firms that will handle the investments that their clients make in the United States on the ground. There's no rules anymore.
Absolutely. But you can see from that this does not sound like a short-term event. It sounds like a trend because people are really investing in the long term. So
we're going to take a short break if you don't mind, Pradnya. This is going so fast for me, I have to take a rest for a minute. We're going to take a short break. That's Pradnya Desh. She's an international investment lawyer in Seattle with Desh International Law. This is ThinkTech Asia. We're talking about international investing, of course. I'm Jay Fidell. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hello, I'm Martin Despang, and I'm the host together with the one and only Ali Yamashita, and our show is called Urban Transcendence. And Urban Transcendence is about identifying where we have a unique situation of a vibrant city in one of the most beautiful natural environments. So how these two can coincide, sometimes conflict, how they could find reciprocity in the 21st century is what we're excited about. And we're planning on bringing in a diverse body of guests, both from the arts and the science and the established and the wise and the emerging generation. So hope you will join us. We'll always be on Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're at ThinkTech Asia here on a given Monday with Pradnya Desh, who is an international investment lawyer in the Desh International Law Firm in Seattle, joins us by Skype, which we greatly appreciate. So Pradnya, we're talking during the break about the EB-5 program, which is an important program, but I have to say in some places it's more important than in other places. So tell us about your practice in EB-5 and what it's doing for at least the area in Seattle, and what it means, do you think, in the future?
Sure. The EB-5 program in Washington State, where I am, has taken off. And it's a very important part of the landscape. And I think it very well should be in Hawaii. Let me tell you a little bit about what the EB-5 program is, to give a bit of background. The EB-5 program is a program by the U.S. government that allows a foreign investor to invest $500,000 or $1 million, depending on the qualifications of the business, and get a green card for that investor and that investor's immediate family. And so it's rather important for many investors, especially many Chinese investors, that they could make their investment count even more. And what we're seeing in our area is that when an investor makes their project an EB-5 project, they are not required to pay as high of a rate of return. Because if you think about it, Jay, is that if part of the return a project is paying is a green card by the U.S. government, they don't have to pay as much of a return in terms of money.
So one of the things that I learned in just passing email between you and me and Mike Messina is that there's an uptick, to use that term, of foreign investment in the United States. And
Yes.
maybe it's both ways. I mean, I think we were doing all the investing before. Now it's both ways, and it's it's a demonstrable trend there. And I wonder what the cause of that is. What has happened in the world to make money flow more often, to make people put money into United States ventures, and ultimately, who is doing it and why are some countries doing it and not others? Would you suggest the EB-5 program is a big factor in that?
I would suggest that it's part of it, but in broad numbers, it's not most of the reason for the uptick, as you say. Is that, first of all, the U.S. is the largest overseas investor, but it's also the largest destination for FDI, and it has been for a number of years. Really, if you look back to 1980, we had a stock of $83 billion, and then now it's about $3.5 trillion. And so, yes, the trend has increased. Yes, EB-5 is important, but it's more to it than that. It still is the underlying strength of the U.S. economy. However, bringing it back to EB-5, we've seen a huge growth in EB-5. The program's been around since the 1990s, and around 2005, the government got around 16 applications for EB-5 visas. And most recently, so this year, the government's up to around 7,000 applications for EB-5 visas. And what this means is that many investors are rushing to get in on the game because we only issued 10,000 EB-5 visas per year. We've never reached the cap. We've never come anywhere close to reaching the cap. But at 7,000 for this year, we very well might. And so that being said, there is an urgency in China, in other places, but especially in China, to use the EB-5 program to invest in the United States. I can't think of a better climate than that.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have to raise the cap one of these days, too.
Maybe. As you know, among other visa categories, that is under consideration. It's surrounded in politics. But an investor who wants to bring their money to the United States to improve a business, I think, is the kind of investor we want. One other thing I need to point out is that each investor, the investment, the $500,000 or $1 million investment in a business must create 10 jobs, at least 10 jobs in that business. Mm-hmm. So this is a job creating program.
So is part of your practice then, to do EB-5 businesses and EB-5 investments and applications?
That is exactly what we do. So we work. That is part of what we do. We work with the business to help them position themselves for EB-5, and then if it looks like EB-5 would be a good fit for them, we help them apply to USCIS to get approved for EB-5. And once that is done, they're available to accept foreign investment under the EB-5 program.
Well, and I take it, well, the EB-5, people who invest in the United States under the EB-5 program, they do it, among other things, well, for one very important reason, and that is for migration, to get the visa. It's for the visa. Right. But, in the notes that I've been reading, you suggest, or Mike Messina suggests, that there are other reasons too. That maybe it's, forget about migration, forget about visas. They really just want to make a return. They think this is a safe place to invest. And that's the most important thing for some people. I mean, how do you feel? How does that work? Is it mostly EB-5, or is it mostly, I want to make a return, I don't care about migrating?
Well, we're seeing both. So picture a wealthy Chinese investor who sees that they might or might not be in a bubble, real estate and otherwise, within China. And this investor is looking to diversify. And in diversifying, a long-term solid bet for an investor has been the United States, regardless of what we've seen in the last few years within our economy. The U.S. over the long term has been a very safe place to invest and continues to be. So certainly diversifying and having good, solid returns. We're not expecting and we're not promising the types of returns, the double-digit types of returns that one sees in China, or sometimes triple-digit returns that one sees in China. But what you see is stability. And so why would a Chinese investor choose to invest within the United States? Security, diversification, And then also, I do have to come back to immigration, because you picture this wealthy investor. So a typical person that we work with is a factory owner in China. His son is about to enter middle school, and he wants to position that child such that he could get into a U.S. university. So he might invest using the EB-5 program and get that child into private school or public school in the United States, and then eventually go to a U.S. university.
There's so many good reasons to come to the United States these days. I mean, we do have a good educational system. It's a friendly system in terms of foreign nationals coming and studying at our colleges and in our graduate programs and so forth. But one of the things, I'm not sure you mentioned it, and that is that some of these investors want to come here and get the technology so that they can repatriate it to their own country. And I would say that China has to be high on that list, because if they can get into those graduate programs, for their kids, but they can also establish companies right there in Seattle that are close to the best technology in the world, it can't be a bad thing.
Absolutely. We hear investors being very blunt about that we would like to invest in your technology and then take it back.
Well, at the end of the day, China is a very ambitious place, and if they can get the best and make the best technology, they'll be ahead of the game. They know perhaps more than we do how important that is. I wish we could take a lesson from them, Well, you talk about factories in the U.S., and I keep thinking of Foxconn. Foxconn is, I looked at this a few weeks ago and realized that they were not planning just one factory in the United States. They were planning a number of factories in the United States. Now, let's get this in a sequence. This is Apple technology, mostly. And I think they make all kinds of other computers, but I think Apple is the big one for them, and the iPhone and the iPad and so forth. So they're taking American technology, they're putting it in a Chinese-managed company, a Chinese-owned company, yes, which is located in the United States, which is staffed by employees from the United States, and then they're selling to a market in the United States. I love that sequence. That is so smart. You got to stand in awe of what they're doing. And I think they will do it, and I think they'll do it in a lot of places in the country. Is this also on your beat?
It is.
You don't have to tell us if you represent Foxconn.
And we don't. I can tell you we don't. We do more frequently represent U.S. companies going out, or U.S. companies expecting or accepting inbound investment. Mm-hmm. But we do on occasion also represent foreign companies coming into the U.S.
Well, it's a good deal either way. I wonder if there are some special considerations, though. You must know about this from your government experience and also from your experience in practicing. In dealing with foreign nationals, foreign businessmen, come from other cultures, other business cultures, and they may speak English the way the Chinese, more and more they do speak English, and they're fully capable of negotiating in English. But it must be a bit of a challenge to put a Chinese investor with an American company, or go a step further and put a Chinese organization like Foxconn that wants to set up a factory. What are the issues that you have from a professional point of view and from, I suppose, a practical point of view in getting that deal made?
Well, in this, again, I'm going to divide out the EB-5 type of investment and the regular type of investment, because the answer to those questions are very different. So on the regular type of investment, we'll start with that, is that there's no doubt there are cultural issues, and those are management issues that must be at least thought about and contemplated before the deal is consummated and all throughout. And there's no shortcut for simply working through the difficulty in culture, because there will be that. There will be a difficulty. There will be a difference in expectations. There will be a difference in management style, a difference in simply an understanding of the way the world works. And you can't skip that. For EB-5, on the other hand, is that the investors are not directly involved in the management. They're not involved at all. They pretty much They send their money, they get their green card, and they can live anywhere in the country at all. And so that's ends up being a pretty good deal for the business, because the business accepts the money. They agree to create the 10 jobs and file for a green card for the investor, but don't have to worry about these really thorny issues of culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so interesting. So, what about going the other way? Traditionally in China, and I suppose in a lot of other countries, the connecting person, you, would want to advise the American investor of the pitfalls and the corruption. And somebody wants a bribe, somebody treats a contract only as one step in the negotiation. Doesn't matter if they signed it or not. We're gonna rewrite the whole thing every day. Those old warnings. It's not just a matter of what direction you hold your business card out when you hand it to someone, or keeping up the drinking in a guanxi session in a restaurant or bar. It's like, how do you find a relationship that is reliable? How do you find a trust relationship, the kind of trust relationship that makes for a long-term contract?
Well, how do you find that, Jay? Where you are right now? How do you find that?
It's true.
But it's true. The same way that you find it in Hawaii, which is likely from somebody else that you trust. So it starts there, right? That you trust somebody who trusts the other person, and then they come into your circle. And it's much more so in China, but that's absolutely the way it's done.
Well, I want to turn that around on you and say, well, what about the Chinese guy who has the money, wants to come here, wants to get into a negotiation, and luckily he arrives at your doorstep, and he is like a little paranoid because he thinks maybe things in the United States are over his head, or he doesn't understand the culture, or he's worried that people will try to skin him alive the way they might try to skin him alive in China, take advantage of his lack of sophistication. So how do you handle that? I mean, this is really important. Now you're a connector. And somebody is relying on you big time to make that investment. What do you say? How do you handle it?
How do we increase that investor's level of comfort?
Exactly.
So that is a tough issue, because certainly it depends on how the investor comes to us. First of all, we would never just get an investor that found our website and decided to invest. That's just not the way it happens. Is that investor would have found us because somebody in China recommended our firm as a way to connect. And wouldn't you do the same thing if you were reaching out abroad? You wouldn't just find somebody that you don't know. You would work through the connections that you already have, and that's what we see them doing.
Yeah, I want to take another break, actually, Pradnya. And when I come back, I'd like to ask you about that network of connections you mentioned, how you establish it, how important it is, how you maintain it. Because I think the world is turning to that. And where before you networked with the people down the block, now you have to network with people everywhere. But let's take a moment for a short break. That's Pradnya Desh. She's the principal partner of Desh International Law Firm in Seattle. We're talking about international investing here at ThinkTech Asia. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rafi. Every week, I'm right here at ThinkTech Hawaii, 3 p.m. on Mondays. My show is Boritz's Bio Briefings. What do we do here? Well, we watch sperm swim. We see if they catch anybody. We check out the latest biosimilars. The kind that, what was his name, the guy with the bicycle? I guess we forgot his name, but he was taking EPO and other human growth factors. We'll be talking about human growth factors. You want to know where to get some? Maybe I'll tell. Anyway, you can catch me, as I said, every week right here, Monday, 3 p.m., ThinkTech Hawaii, Dr. Rafi. You can also find me on Twitter, BioInfo Medical. Or you can catch me on Facebook, Dr. Rafael Boritzer. I'll be happy to converse with you. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Pradnya Desh, who is an international investment lawyer in Seattle. What a great place to be an international investment lawyer in a time where Investments are being made in both directions. The world is coming together in terms of business. It's the perfect time, the perfect storm, if you will. And as we left it before the break, I wanted to get her input on exactly how the lawyers' network, the connector person's network, has become more relevant in these times, the flat world times where we have the internet and immediate communication everywhere. How do you establish, Pradnya, how do you establish the necessary international global network to do the work you do?
So I personally, I go there. There's nothing replaces FaceTime. You have to meet a person, you have to shake their hand, you have to gain their trust in person. It's something that, unfortunately, Skype is not enough. It might be a good start, but it's not enough. So what I do is we started out by having an office in Beijing, and our head attorney who was in Beijing brought people into the circle regarding the firm, regarding my circle as well. And then those investors have come to meet me in person. I've gone to meet them, and I extend it out that way. And it's irreplaceable. And so if you are a business owner looking for investment in your company, you have to travel.
Yes, and you have to spend time.
You do.
And it's social time. Some of it is, according to my discussion earlier today, it's social time. It's getting to know, the family and the dog, and all the personal information that can help define people, because these are ways in which you can establish the credibility of your negotiating partner. If you know that, it gives you sort of a bounce back verification that this person is real and honest and trustworthy and so forth. So when you go, you don't just sit in a conference room and share thoughts about the latest Supreme Court decisions.
Not at all.
You talk about personal things, right?
Absolutely right.
Well, let me transpose that a little bit, because we talked during the break about trying to expand this whole discussion outside of China. China so easily comes to mind because it is so prominent in so many ways. But do you have a network? Have you gone to the trouble of establishing a network in other countries? And if so, what countries, and what are the different circumstances there?
Sure. Yes, I do. Our firm works in India, Korea, Vietnam, Brazil, in other countries as well. But that's where we've made the most trips and done the most transactions, U.S. to those countries. For example, a U.S. company looking to expand into India, we've helped them with the U.S. end of that transaction and helped them to make the right connections. Because similar to the relationship-based business environment in China, we see the exact same thing in India.
Oh, India is really coming up these days. It's fantastic. So I mean to say that you have offices, and how big is the Desh International Law Firm?
We have to say we're not that big, and we don't have offices. So no U.S. law firm is allowed to have an office in India. That it's against Indian bar rules. Mm-hmm. And so what we do have is a relationship with a firm that does all of our U.S.-India transactions on the India side. And then same with Brazil. We have a partner firm in Brazil that works on all of our Brazil connections. And then in China, we actually handle those transactions natively.
Oh, wow. This is great. So let me get practical and say, suppose you want to establish an agency, if you will, a correspondent in Bolivia, just to say you do. How do you go about doing that? When you pick up the phone and say, hi, can I have the yellow pages for, was it La Paz? How do you find a correspondent in a country in which you don't have a correspondent? Yeah,
so that's a pretty tough thing for a U.S. business to do. So I'll give you two pieces of advice. Well, first of all, you asked me how I do it. So the way that I do it is I do use my previous connections through, since I was a U.S. diplomat, I have a lot of worldwide connections. So I first call someone I know. No matter what country it is, it's so much better to start with someone you know than someone from the Yellow Pages. But say that a business in Hawaii is looking for someone in Bolivia and they don't know anybody. So Jay, they could call me, and I would love that.
Okay, I wrote your name down. I'm all set.
All right, you called me.
Well, I think it's the networking in general, but it strikes me that in the past, only 5 or 10 years, really, the whole concept of networking has grown. It's much more than just getting a business card. It's being, fairly ambitious about connecting with people far away and not letting them get away from you. It's so easy to have a short conversation at a function or a party or an educational conference or something. Take the business card, put it in your file, end of story. Nothing comes of that. So it's the follow-up, I think, that makes a big difference in maintaining the network, no?
Maintaining is essential, because how do you know from one business card whether it's a person you can trust and it's a person that you want to do business with? You just don't know that. And so what I was going to recommend that a business that's looking for a connection in another country would be wise to reach out to the U.S. Commercial Service, because they have some great programs to allow a person to fly in and go to the appointments that the U.S. Commercial Service has set up for them. They have something called a Gold Key program, in which the Commercial Service will create appointments, will set up appointments and do some due diligence, some level of due diligence on each of the companies. Mm-hmm. It is a great service provided by our government.
So how can you put somebody, your client, say an American client for the moment, into La Paz, into some country you just got started in?
Okay.
I guess if they say they want the contract to be in Spanish, then you're going to have to rely on somebody who does legal Spanish, which isn't the same as regular Spanish, as in every language. So how do you handle the negotiation? I mean, I suppose this is something you got from government also. How do you handle the negotiation of a contract in another language, another culture, where if you make a mistake and you don't understand the true idiomatic understanding or legal understanding of the words in that contract, you're exposed? How do you protect your client that way?
You are exposed. It's important to have an attorney that speaks the native language. And so we would put one of our attorneys that fluently speaks Spanish and understands the culture on that. And that's an important advantage to have for a company to have on their side, somebody that is speaking the language. And then also in the contract, it's important to put which language contract controls. Is it the English language version of the contract, or is it the Spanish language version of the contract? And yes, your translator makes sure that they match. But what if someone messed up? We've seen cases, especially in China, turn on one word and the shading of a word, of how a word would be interpreted in the other language as opposed to how it would be interpreted in the U.S. So that is all in the drafting of the contract. Which language controls, which set of laws controls? Is it going to be decided in the courts of the United States of America in Hawaii, or will it be decided in the courts of Bolivia? And you need to know that as part of your contract. So not only the choice of venue for the courts, the choice of law, which body of laws apply to this contract, because it very well could be different, and you need to put into the contract which one it would be.
And how about the due diligence involved in this investment, say in Bolivia? How do you conduct a due diligence? Because, investment contracts are kind of different because you're relying on somebody's representations as to whether certain facts are true, certain benefits are there, certain, leverage and so forth. How can you assure your client that the representations are, robust and true?
Well, you have to do on-the-ground due diligence, because you can't simply assume that the representations are true. And to do on-the-ground due diligence, it would be wise to get a firm in that country to do the investigation for you.
So I see the model. The model is emerging for me from the Bolivia example. You could, Pradnya, right? You could go to any country in the world and do the Bolivia example.
That's
you can
correct.
make contact through Martindale-Hubbell International Law Directory, if you like. You could find some firm. You could check the firm out, use the internet, look at their website, whatnot. You could talk to some of your friends in the government and see if it's their legitimate firm and what the risks are in that country. And in a fairly short period of time, you could establish an agency that you would presumably trust to negotiate the contract, to check out the representations, to write the contract in the language, whatever it is that's agreed, and actually make a deal. So this is a model that you are designing not only for China and India and the countries you're dealing with right now, but any country in the world.
That's correct.
Same model would apply.
That's correct. In countries that we don't have on-the-ground representation, that's exactly what you described is exactly what we would do. And in the countries where we have on-the-ground representation, it's that much quicker because we've done it time and time again, and so we know exactly which people to work with.
Okay, on that note, I'll take another short break if you don't mind. It's Pradnya Desh. She's the founder of Desh International Law in Seattle. This is ThinkTech Asia. I'm Jay Fidell. We're talking about international investment, and it is really great to talk to her. We'll be right back after this short break. I'm Jay Fidell. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay, it's every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the state of clean energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll see you there. Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell here on ThinkTech Asia with Pradnya Desh, who joins us by Skype from Seattle. She's a lawyer with the Desh International Law Firm that is doing business, representing investors both ways in and out of the United States for international investing. And I admire her greatly that she is designing a model that will carry on into the 22nd century, I think. Your firm has a long shadow already.
We certainly do. Thank you for that.
So, by the way, how old is your firm?
Our firm is extremely new. Our firm is 3 years old.
Okay, well...
However, each of the attorneys in the firm has been conducting this type of business for a number of years. As I mentioned to you, I was with the U.S. State Department for a number of years doing international law before joining the firm.
Oh, by the way, I meant to ask, before we get to the last topic of the show, which is your advice to Hawaii, how important is mediation and arbitration and venue for mediation and arbitration in these investment contracts? It seems to me that sometimes it's even a deal point, but other times these days it can be negotiated. Where does it fit in your negotiation?
Well, we prefer to negotiate it in, especially if you're looking at, say, a country such as India. It takes up to 7 years. Well, it takes 7 years or longer for a court to decide anything. And so if you're... It would be wise for you to put mediation or arbitration into your contract, knowing that the court system, yes, it works, but it takes very long. And by the time you've been in court that long, you've spent a lot of money. And so it's wise to choose a set of arbitration rules that are internationally recognized, and to choose an arbitration venue that is also internationally recognized.
Yeah, I spoke to the exchange Chinese lawyer I mentioned, and she said that in the past, the Chinese businessmen were inclined to go along with the American demand that the venue and a choice of laws for arbitration be in the United States. But now the Chinese businessmen sometimes demand that the venue and choice of laws be in China, and the American guys go along with it. So there's a dramatic change for you.
There is a dramatic change, but there is another way. They can choose Singapore or Hong Kong, and those might be a point that would be easier for both parties to accept.
Yes. Okay, moving to Hawaii now with our remaining time. In Hawaii, we haven't had all that much Chinese investment. I don't think we've had many, if any, EB-5 cases actually get concluded and the investment made. We have a reputation perhaps that's anti-business. What's your advice to us? What can we do now to draw investment here and also to encourage our investors who come from many places, to settle here and have dollars to invest and sort of encourage them to do investment overseas? Thoughts?
Yes. So starting with the EB5 investment is to position a company for EB5 investment, the company must initiate it. So it has to start there, that a company must decide that they want to make their project an EB5 investment. And so they have to apply to the U.S. government for that. And after the application process is done, then they're able to accept it. And I don't know the numbers regarding Hawaiian companies that have gone through that process, but given the numbers that you cited, that it's likely that that's low. So that's a good start, is that companies investigating fully whether EB5 is the right vehicle for them, and if it is, to make the application to allow them to accept EB5 investment. Mm-hmm. And just to give an idea about the types of industries that commonly use EB5 investment, real estate, of course, is commonly done, but I've seen companies be a lot more creative than that. Assisted living is also a very popular use of EB5. Right here in Washington State, where I am, we see EB5 centers, especially we see assisted living centers very frequently accept EB5 investment. So assisted living medical facilities are another great source, a great place for EB5 investors. Really anywhere that you could see that it would be possible or reasonable to create 10 jobs with $1 million or $500,000 would be a good candidate for accepting EB5 investment. And so we mentioned assisted living, medical facilities, energy, and manufacturing companies are all excellent candidates for EB5. But it has to start with a company deciding that they want to and starting to go down that road.
Mm. Do you worry about a given community, like an island community like Hawaii, being, being besieged by EB5 investment and having, too many? Did it ever get to that? Too many investors, so that it changes the essential character of the place. After all, islands are very fragile communities.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not a community would not have to accept any investment that came along, and specifically a company would not have to accept any investment that came along. So there are already internal checks that can prevent that from happening, because you have your local permitting rules that would take such a thing into consideration. You have the opinion of the community and how it is accepting a particular project as well. And so, yes, a project owner might apply to be an EB5, but the project owner can and should be picky as to which investor it chooses and why.
Well, actually, it occurs to me that what you do in Seattle could apply anywhere in the country, because it's a federal issue. You may want to have correspondents in other states on specific state law, business issues that may come up in order to build a business and so forth. But you could consult on EB5. You could represent clientele on EB5 in every state in the union. Am I right? You could represent them here in Hawaii, for that matter.
That's right, and we do. In fact, we just a few months ago were consulting with an EB5 assisted living facility that was thinking about doing EB5. They're still deciding, but that's right in your neck of the woods that we were doing that. So we're able to work in any state on the EB5, because EB5 is national. It's national law.
Tell them they should do it. We need assisted living properties here, and that would be a very socially acceptable investment as far as the community is concerned. But I wanted to get to one last thing, and that is this. We've touched on this, and you are the very example of it. It seems to me that in order to build those connectors and build that guanxi and make those trips, that young people, including young lawyers, need to get out, need to go overseas. And I always suggest to people that before they settle down in their home state or the state they want to make their home, they should take a trip. And they should make it a business trip. They should get a job overseas. It's doable. and they should learn the very things we've been talking about in terms of the tastes and expectations and capabilities of foreign investors, so that when they come back here, they'll be well qualified to be connectors. And I know that's your story, so you're going to think that's a good idea, but tell the people here in Hawaii what you think about it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is an excellent idea. It's certainly an excellent idea for young people at the beginning of their career to do that. But I also have to point out that one could do that at any point in their career. I know a person locally who lost his job, and that was a rather unfortunate event for him, but he decided to make the best of it, and he up and moved to Vietnam. So he decided, and he had no connection whatsoever. With Vietnam, he moved to Vietnam, decided to just understand how U.S.-Vietnam trade worked, and discovered a large group of investors, and now he is an EB-5 agent in Vietnam, funneling investment back to the United States. So yes, I agree, it should happen at the beginning of your career, but it can happen anytime.
So what's your favorite country to go and do that? What's your favorite country to solicit investment from? What's your favorite country to make investment in? Do you have any of them on the top of your list?
Well, I have to start out because you said a word that brings into consideration legal compliance. So I don't solicit investment. That's not something.
Sorry, I said that.
It's not something that a lawyer's allowed to do. So, what is my favorite country to give talks about the opportunities in the United States? That's a really tough question. I haven't found one that I didn't like. Every time I've gone into a country and talked about the opportunities, I've received such a warm welcome and a flurry of interest in the months after. So I love working in China. I love working in India. I've loved working in Korea, Vietnam, Brazil. Many and others that I haven't mentioned.
That's great. Well, my last question is, where do you think this is going? So, we have an uptick in international investment. Hopefully, presumably, that will continue as the world, matures into the 21st century and technology and communications get better and better. Where will it go? And also, where will it go for the connector people? I mean, do you have a vision of the future on what will happen in this area, not only for your firm, but for the way things work?
Well, globalization over the past century has expanded. Year by year, we've become the world has become more interconnected because of communication, because of technology. We've become more connected as countries, and I see that increasing because of travel and because of person-to-person connections increasing. So we see that between businesses and we see that between people. So I only see it growing.
And something else too is that every business deal is personal diplomacy.
Yes.
And the more business deals that are made internationally, the more the world comes together, and the safer the world is because we're all connected that way.
I agree.
You're involved in good and important work. Pradnya Desh, who runs the Desh International Law Firm in Seattle and truly is international, here on ThinkTech Asia, talking about international investing. It has been a really interesting discussion with you. Thank you very much, Pradnya.
Thank you very much, Jay.
Let's do it again.
Let's.
Aloha.
Mahalo.